You're listening to Funny Peculiar with Jeff Downs.
Well, this is one of my very first aerial acrobat who specialises in aerial stuff. So a big welcome and a hello to Jess Abouzeid. Hello, Jess.
Hi. Hello.
Hey, hello, Dave. How you doing? You all right?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
And so, I'm just looking on your website. You do... now we're going to talk about your aerial acrobatics, but you do fire play, which for people listening now, they'll get used to that term. That's fire breathing or fire eating, and I've interviewed people around that. You make your own costumes as well?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I buy them, but a lot of the times, I'll customize them and make them myself, and
Brilliant.
So,
That's great. That's great. And also it's said on your website, from corporate events to comedy characters. Do you actually do comedy characters, or are you meaning you're with comedy characters when you perform your stuff?
Both, actually.
Oh, right.
When you say it like that, probably both.
So you do a little bit of comedy as well, then?
A little bit, yeah. Like some of the characters that I've got, we usually like play a little bit more funny sometimes. So like there's a duo act that I've got, and it's Poison Ivy and Harlequin, and the first time we performed that, it was we did it like it was really silly. We were like robbing a bank and that. So yeah,
that's so Poison Ivy, Harlequin. So for people that don't know, so that now Harlequin, are these characters from Marvel films and stuff like that? Is that where the names come from? Because I'm a bit rubbish with Marvel, and all these different names. And there's Venom out at the moment, isn't there? So I never.
Yeah.
Okay, so which one's Harlequin again? Was that the one with the red and the blue ponytails?
Yeah, so this we actually came up with this act before the movie came out. So this is like an older act. So we've got we were there first.
You were there first.
We used the more like classic Harlequin look. So the costume is like the red and black with the diamonds on it and things like that.
Ah, right. So that's the classic Harlequin outfit that then jesters and kings, and that's where all that comes from.
Yeah, and then Poison Ivy has got like a green outfit with like some sequins and leaves. And
wonderful. And Poison Ivy, and which film is she from? From Avengers? One of those? Is she a character from there? I'm never great with these.
She's not actually been in any of the movies. She's from like the original comic books and in the cartoons and things like that. So she's not had a movie at the moment.
Oh, right, I see. I wonder if they'll branch out into more. You can have Poison Ivy. There could be Venus flytrap. There could be rhododendron bush. Something, Come on, Marvel. Get into gardening. So wonderful. So we'll talk about that a bit later on. But I think the main thing that I want to chat to you about today is the aerial acrobatics, because that immediately says danger to me. You're up in the air, and so just give us a brief description of kind of your performance and your act at the moment, for people that wouldn't necessarily know the terms and what you actually do. So just talk us through kind of what you do.
Okay. So I teach aerial classes and I perform, and I go and I work on a range of different apparatus. So for example, silks, which is basically a big piece of fabric hung from the ceiling. It's quite iconic. It's probably one of the circus kits that most people are sort of familiar with. Aerial hoop as well, which is a big steel hoop large enough to sit in, and again that's suspended from a height. Also occasionally do things like rope and trapeze as well. So trapeze is the horizontal steel bar with two ropes attached. It looks like a big swing, basically. And I do that solo by myself, so where there's just one performer on the equipment. And I've also got some duo acts as well, where there's two people on the equipment. So, for example, doubles trapeze, you've generally got one person who is what we call the base, so the person who does a lot of the supporting, and then you've got the flyer, who is generally the person that gets thrown and catched and things like that. And Yeah, so all
that,
sorts really.
okay. So well, no, that's great because it again, when someone sees aero acrobatic, well, it's just swinging around, and it's like, but it's not. But it's
Oh,
not.
you hurt me when you say that. That cuts deep.
That cuts. I'm hurting the artist. But this is generally, and this is why this podcast is about, because I want. There we go. It's not just someone hanging off a rope. There's silks. The steel hoop, the rope itself, trapeze, which is so there's lots of different.
There's loads. Yeah, I haven't even talked about most of them.
Well, yeah, and I think people don't realise. So, and then so trapeze is very traditional circus. Is that? And when you so let's just go back, because before you did this. We were talking earlier. You came out of uni, but you weren't sure what you were doing. You did a few temp jobs. Is that right?
Yeah, so I'd always kind of done quite active hobbies and things like that, and my route actually went slightly via pole and burlesque. So while I was at uni, I got into the burlesque societies and started doing that, and then through that I sort of found pole and pole dancing, and then through that I found silks and
so there seems to be a connection. I think I've had a few other guests that have, again, burlesque or a certain discipline will then lead on to another one. So you did you did burlesque, is that right?
Yeah, quite early, and I only performed a couple of times.
Okay.
It wasn't, I didn't get really into it, but it was kind of the gateway for a lot of other stuff.
It was your gateway drug, as it were.
And I really, really enjoyed pole dancing, and then through that I just got into looking at other equipment and other people who'd done it and things like that, and
and did you have a burlesque name? Did you get that far with coming up with...
No, I still don't even really have a circus performer name. Every now and again, friends will suggest names, and they always think they're really good. And I don't know. I found it. I am actually a group that I perform with sometimes. At the moment, are like, "Oh, Jess, we need you to come up with a performer name," and I'm no, that's who am I? That's such a big question.
That's so because I was going to say it's and that's it. Do you feel compelled to come up with the amazing flying Jess, or that sort of because there's pressure, because it's you obviously, well, I can just be me and this is what I do. Is there pressure to, well, you need a more fancy name than that?
Sometimes, yeah, and occasionally I do worry that because I've got a foreign surname, people are just going to look at that and be like, "Oh, I can't spell that. What's that?" It's not a really short, snappy, easy sort of stage name.
Yeah.
But I generally perform as myself, and then I come up with characters or acts and things. So yeah, I don't know. I just never really got round to having a stage name or anything. I don't know.
Well, I think it's moved on. It's modern days, isn't it? You don't have to. It's like beforehand. Perhaps you needed, when there was no social media or whatever turn of the century stuff. You had to have a big sign, and you had to have whatever dancing bears. If we're talking about whatever period that. You had to make a massive impact. But of course, now it's just it's about marketing, about business as well, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So, and Abouzeid, that is is that right? Your dad was from the Lebanon, is that right? And that's where that comes
it's
from.
a Lebanese surname.
So that's kind of I love it. That's a great name. So it's like. So you were so you were doing a few temp jobs, and while you were doing this, you were getting into the burlesque and pole dancing as well. So did you? You like the pole dance? Was that a good physical discipline that sort of prepped you for the circus stuff?
Oh yeah, definitely. I really loved it. I mean, I still really enjoy it. I don't really get much chance to do it anymore, but the physical challenge and the fact that it was different and interesting, and I had a really awesome tutor and things like that who was fantastic. And I mean, at this point I was climbing quite a lot as well, so I had fairly decent upper body strength, which I think made it a little bit easier. And then when I got on some silks for the very first time, it was at least like vaguely familiar. So again, like because of the climbing and because of the pole and things like that, I could sort of, yeah, like I progressed a little bit quicker
And was that
you
through
had no practice at all.
Sorry, was that through the pole dancing class? They had silks there one day, or happened to be hanging around, and you just went, "Oh, what's those?"
No, it was a separate place.
Right, okay.
That I found out about, and I'd always wanted to try silks, and it was actually after a breakup, and I was like, oh God, if I'm gonna have to like stay in Sheffield, I'm gonna go do something new, like when you want to, you just feel like doing something.
Yeah.
So I went to a class at a place called Greentop in Sheffield.
Okay.
And I had my first ever silks class, and I was completely hooked, and I've started going to the evening classes there. And
brilliant.
Yeah.
And how many years ago was that?
Oh gosh, I don't even know actually.
Yes. Quite a few.
It was
5, 10, something like that.
I did. God, no, definitely not 10. Like I've not been doing like in terms of a lot of circus performers, I'm still a bit of a circus baby in a way.
Right, okay. So
I did a full-time course at Greentop in 2014, so that was 4 years ago. And I was doing aerial recreationally maybe like a year or two before that. I can't really remember, to be honest. Yeah.
So and now Sheffield is known for there's the snooker, the crucible. There's that. It's also a theatre as well. Is it getting? And Greentops it's a massive circus school. Is that getting more well known now? Do you think more people are wanting to get into circus skills?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, we're really lucky in Sheffield because there's even a second circus venue in Sheffield that I train for Victoria Works, which is really, that's a really beautiful venue. So yeah, we're very lucky in Sheffield. We've got 2 places, and yeah, I mean, especially in the last couple of years or so, aerial arts has just absolutely exploded. And then this year with the movie The Greatest Showman coming out, everybody's just been like, we want circus artists, artists. Like, my kid wants to do aerial, and like, it's gone bonkers really this last year or so.
So the market responds. So when a film like that comes out, your phone will be ringing because corporate events say, "We're right, we want someone that can do that," and you found that's why you've had the call out.
Yeah, and it tends to go around like themes and stuff as well. Okay. So like, for example, when people want, I don't know, say entertainment for like a Christmas party or something, they'll say, "Oh, can we have it in the style of I don't know." So like a couple of years ago, Great Gatsby was like really popular. Everybody wanted like 1920s themed party and like Great Gatsby themed parties, things like that. Whereas this year it's been, we want Greatest Showman style, we want vintage circus, we want
like
traditional circus,
traditional going back. So let's go back to when you did a few temp jobs and then you looked at silks. You thought, right, I'll give this a go, and that's when you went to Greentops. And what was that like, your first day at the circus school? Like, this is going to be a new beginning and learning. Were you nervous?
My first day of the full-time course.
Yeah.
It was brilliant. I absolutely loved it. Like, I remember getting my timetable through, and it was just like the most, because like it was just the most fun timetable you'd ever seen. I had like sections of the week, and it was like you like juggling and clowning and dance and aerial and acrobatics, and it was a really broad covering of everything for the first couple of weeks, and then you chose your specializations. So yeah, I don't know, there was something about seeing like clowning on a schedule.
Double clowning followed by single juggling, and then and obviously no detention, because everybody's staying late, I assume, because that's what that's what you want to be doing. And so and then what's the safety aspect like? Because obviously with the juggling and various things, that's fine. You can, but as you start to work yourself off the floor and onto silks, ropes, trapeze, Are
Yes.
you tied in? You obviously got everybody has to buddy up. What's the system there? Because you have to be very careful. I would have thought.
Um, this is actually like a whole big topic.
All right, excellent.
Yeah, this is like a really juicy subject
Right.
because with how popular circus has been getting recently,
Yeah.
a lot of people have had some really valid concerns and like questions about safety and things like that. In my personal
sorry, just to
opinion,
stop you there,
oh, go on.
because no,
Yeah,
just to add in, if I can, because Cirque du Soleil, who's one of the premier biggest circus act performers, they've had a couple of deaths recently, haven't they? Sort of, not recently, but like definitely in the last 2 years. They've
yeah.
had people, and that's. But we'll talk about them because I take it when they perform, they don't have safety lines or anything like that. Is that what makes them the best because they're so highly trained to do that?
Well, it's again, this is like a really like big, interesting topic. So, there have been quite a few high-profile accidents recently, not just with Cirque du Soleil, but
Okay.
with a couple of other circus artists recently. And a lot of well, at least with a few of them, it's actually been down to a failure of rigging and equipment.
Really?
And sometimes, yeah, it's particularly tragic because it's very often avoidable, and sometimes, yeah, it's through no fault of the artist at all. Sometimes,
Oh,
it is because the artist was, tired or ill or injured or whatever. But
sure.
yeah, there's been a few accidents recently that have been, they've been investigated and it was found to be a rigging failure, so a failure with the equipment in some way.
That would be a bolt, a harness, a bit of stitching has come. Do you know?
Yeah, definitely that. So yeah, I can't remember specifically, but yeah,
Sure.
it would be something like that.
Okay.
But just to go back to what you said a second
Sure.
ago,
Sure.
generally circus artists don't perform with harnesses or wires or anything like that, because the safety precaution is the fact that it's rehearsed, so people should know what they're doing anyway. And
Right.
obviously, rehearsals and when you're training, you will have mats and spotters and harnesses or nets or whatever it is that you need. But even in some situations, people will perform with crash mats. So, for example, if you're performing doubles trapeze, because there's such a lot of like big like catch and release moves, for example, it's generally still standard practice to have a crash mat.
Right. Okay.
So, for example, if anybody watches Britain's Got Talent, there was a duo trapeze artist that missed one of their catches recently. That was only a couple of weeks ago. And that sparked the whole debate about whether people should perform with or without crash mats and things like that.
Right. Okay. So that's
Yeah.
and when you train, obviously you are doing it over soft areas. Is that what they call and sponge sort of areas where?
So, yeah, generally most people will have like crash mats.
Okay.
Because like a sponge floor isn't generally enough. You want like a big, thick,
Right.
generally
Okay.
30 centimeters or more sort of density crash mat. But I mean, it depends what it is that you're doing. That's why it's really important you have a teacher who knows what they're on about, so they can like assess what it is that you're doing and assess the kind of protection that you need.
So when you're training, they obviously teach you about safety and watching for other people. And before you even say, when was the first time you then got up high and started to do trapeze work? And what was that like?
It was, well, you kind of build up to it in a way. On the on the trapeze, for example, the place where I trained, there's various trapezes set at different heights.
Okay.
So if you're training a move that you haven't done before, for example, you can go and work it out and iron out all the kinks on the low trapeze.
Yeah.
And then when you feel like you've got the hang of it, and you feel more confident, and your teacher or coach or whoever has said, yeah, I think you're pretty solid in that, you can work your way up to higher bars.
Okay. So a particular move, you'll start on lower, like literally you are a foot off the floor, but enough for you to do the trick, and then you go
Yeah,
up high.
gently.
Yeah, yeah. And then,
generally, yeah, it'll work something like that.
and so when you were at this circus school, so there was your timetable. You had all these different lessons, but you were wanting to do the silks, the aerial acrobatics. So what was that like when you first learned? And the silk seemed to be a big thing for you. How do they teach you, and do you sort of like then add your own style into what you do? Let us know about that.
Yeah, so it depends on the teacher really. Like everybody will have their own particular sort of teaching style, but you would generally like. So, for example, when I'm teaching, if I want to show people a particular move, I'll usually start by breaking it down into its sort of component movements, really. So that might be doing like a small version of it low down, or it might be working through the movement on the floor, or it might be doing some sort of exercise which uses a similar muscle in the body or something like that. So generally trying to think of a way to like break it down into its little pieces before we then start to take it in the air. And then once the student has generally got the hang of it, then we can add on like, so now try it without this hand, or try it with the straight leg, or try it, and then you can add variations and transitions, so different and interesting ways in and out of the move. And
and then so you do a lot of teaching as well as is it a 50-50 split between teaching and performing, or do you prefer teaching as opposed to performing?
Ooh, that's a difficult question. I really enjoy both, actually. Like I started teaching pretty early on, like because I would volunteer in like shadow classes while I was on my course at Greentop. But recently I've done a couple of teacher training courses, so I feel pretty confident in my teaching now. And I've also worked with some really interesting people. Like I had a project recently where I worked with amputees, and I've had a student who's in a wheelchair and things like that. Wow. So this last year or so, I've really I feel like I've got some really great teaching. Really?
Experience. So you've got people that amputees, they want to learn to do aerial stuff, and that just makes them feel a bit, because obviously they'll have difficulty walking or being in a wheelchair, but this allows them to fly. They can be completely different. Is that a sort of release for them?
Well, I mean, this particular project, it was actually with ex-military veterans who have had amputations. Wow. So it was really interesting for me as well, because generally I teach and work with a lot of young women and girls, whereas these guys were older men. So it was really interesting working with different bodies, and then the fact that they had injuries or other needs on top of that, and we were training them to work on these custom built like cubes. They were like these big scaffolding cubes with all these different sort of like cutouts and shapes. They were going to be doing that for a show. Brilliant. So we were training them on aerial equipment so that they would have the sort of physical capability to then go on these.
Wow. That's brilliant. And so I take it they had like good upper body strength already, because they're having to use their arms all the time. So were they kind of adept at, then once you'd shown them a few moves, they kind of got it quite quickly, or was it various levels of learning?
It was really mixed. So we had some people who had like upper body, upper limb amputations. We had some people with lower leg amputations. We had some people who had like a cognitive impairment, so it was more of a memory issue. We had some people who were very physically fit. Like there was one guy who was there were some people who'd been in like the Paralympics, and then we had some people who hadn't really had like much physical activity since they'd left the army. So it was so interesting as a teacher, just working with all these like fabulous different bodies. And
So, and I suppose in a way, once you teach your day, is there an aching to actually get back yourself and we've talked about you do the silks, but you do a still hoop as well, and you do the rope.
Yeah.
So and what's your favourite discipline out of all of these? What do you always go back to?
I don't know. I think that's one of the things that I like about it. Like, if you're not feeling particularly inspired by one piece of kit, you can go do something else. So I really enjoy doubles trapeze. Like, that's always really fun.
And
at
just
the moment,
explain, that's with another partner and you'll catch.
Yes.
Right, okay.
Yeah, that's always super fun. Like, that's always really enjoyable. At the moment, I'm doing silks because I've got a show coming up next week. So yeah, it depends really. Yeah, it's hard to pick a favourite.
And talk us through. So when you do say doubles to trapeze, and that's my question. That's the thing going through my head. So when we were talking about the base and the fly. So the person that, and we've seen it on the big top. So we see the person on the one trapeze, and they go upside down, they lock their legs, and they're going to catch you. And then you're the one on the other side that we've all seen, that it's normally a woman. So the bloke tends to be the catcher. The lady goes up, she does a pose, and then she starts flying across. I mean, I'm talking, this is traditional circus when I saw it when I was a kid. But what's it like when you push yourself off, and obviously you have to work your timings with your catcher, and that you have to then release yourself? What was it like the first time you had to do that? Because there's a massive mental barrier, surely.
Okay, so there's been a little bit of a misunderstanding. There's actually several types of trapeze, and what you've just described is
really?
okay. Trapeze. Yeah. So you can have static trapeze. So static trapeze is where the trapeze generally doesn't like move or swing around. So the steel bar, two ropes, generally just, stays there and the artist moves around it.
Yeah.
Then you have dance trapeze, which is becoming more popular at the moment, where you've got a steel bar and two ropes are attached to the same point together. So they make a triangle, and sometimes this trapeze is rigged quite low on the floor, so the person might use the floor and like swing around a little bit, and it generally involves a bit more spinning. Then you've got swinging trapeze, which is a single trapeze which swings.
Okay, that's the one we see going back and forward.
Yeah, so that's when it's just one going back and forward, so like a big swing in a park.
Oh, I see, right, yes.
Trapeze, which is what you just described, where you've got two trapezes which swing back and forth, and people move and do tricks between the two. So I can't actually think where there is a flying trapeze rig in the UK, because they take up so much space.
Oh, really? It's quite a difficult rig. Really? I thought that would be the popular one that everybody would want to do.
Yeah, I mean, I actually can't think. There must be one somewhere, but I really can't think where there is one.
But you've done that. You've done flying trapeze.
So no, not flying trapeze.
Oh, you've not, because it's a different discipline.
Yeah, so I've done a little bit of swinging trapeze.
Right.
And there is a swinging trapeze rig at Greentop, and there's also one down in the National Centre for. There's a few down at the National Centre for Circus Arts in London.
Right.
But other than that, I'm not entirely sure where there are other swinging rigs. Even it's quite hard to set up, really.
Because it's got to be professionally set up, and I take it is that flying trapeze is a very hard discipline, and you've got to be years and years of knowing what you're doing. And is it just fraught with danger, that particular one?
I don't know. I've never tried flying trapeze, but I mean, so in the flying trapeze rigs that I have seen, it's performed with a net, so that's the kind of thing where you would generally have a net beneath you. I've done a bit of swinging trapeze, and for swinging trapeze, generally you have a harness with a lunge on it, so you've got a person on the other end of the line feeding the amount of rope that goes through to stop the rope getting tangled and
Right.
yeah.
That's it. I didn't know there was four different types of trapeze we've just named. I don't know if there's more. I never knew that. And this is the point of the podcast, because it's like I am the layman in a way. So it's
Yeah.
like, and I'll ask all the stupid idiot questions, and then you can
No,
put me.
it's a totally brilliant question, because
I didn't
everybody
even-
just sees the thing
Yeah.
that they see, the big top or whatever, and
Yeah.
assume it's the only kind.
I
Yeah.
didn't realise. So, and then the sorry, I went diverted off into trapeze. I had to ask you that because it was so. But you do the silks, which again, that because. Well, because if an corporate event says to you, "Oh, we want to swing into trapeze," then you turn around and go, "Well, actually, for a rig, it'd be impossible." So I take it, as a solo performer, is it easier for you to turn up and go? Obviously, it is, because you can go, right, I've got my still hoop in the van and I've got my silks. But do you get to a corporate event and go, right, I'm here? And they go, right, that's the hook over there, and it's like 3 foot off the floor. So have you had a few occasions where you've turned up and the event haven't quite got it right, or do you send through a massive look? I need this, this, and this.
Yeah, so when you are booking a gig, then there's usually a whole lot of emails and pictures, and
Right, okay.
I need to speak to the engineer or whoever, and but so you should have an idea roughly of what's going on beforehand, but even then things are still not as people say they are a lot of the time, and it will usually involve you have to get there maybe like the day before or earlier in the day to get the equipment up. So access is usually quite a big part of the job. So, for example, you might have to have a stage technician come in with like a cherry picker, or maybe you have to get somebody. So yeah, it's something that I've been trying to get better at myself. So recently, at the beginning of this year, I actually did a rope access course. So I am qualified as a rope access technician, so I can climb up in the ceiling on harnesses and ropes. And
really? So you do all that?
Yeah.
Right. Because you never forget. It's like, you have to be trained. So you're qualified to attach. You can climb up into rigging and attach a rope as well. Is that what it's all?
Yeah. So so you've got the actual access into the ceiling or the structure or whatever,
and then you know how to tie them. So have you turned up an event with you, as you're the performer, and they just go, you'll be all right with that, won't you? And they just point to like a coat hanger hanging on. Have you had that where it's like they've completely misread the brief?
Yeah. So I've never had it where it's been like horrendously wrong, because I try and make sure before, like you should be doing the work beforehand to make sure people know what you need, because the point that you're hanging off has to be able to take a certain amount of weight, because of the forces that you put through the equipment when you're on it. So you have to make sure that people are aware of that. So I have had gigs before where
which one in particular? Just go on, just give us an account of what happened. Was it just someone pointed to that'll be all right, won't it? And it was just like, no, just take us to that.
Yeah, it wasn't. The example that I'm thinking of wasn't quite as bad as that, but this example is actually more common, I think. The rigging point itself was okay, but it was in a theatre, so there was like other stuff in the way, so the point was actually a lot lower than they said it was, and they wanted me to do silk. So you get there and you realise that you have to change your entire routine, because they didn't think to tell you that, okay, the attachment is there, but they'd gone and put in loads of lights and like scaffolding, and then all the staging and all the all the other stuff that you have in the ceiling at a theatre. And like you're trying to do your silks routine and you're just getting burnt by the lights, and you're going to kick the lights and things like that.
Yeah, you can't be too. You've got to. So I take it you need obviously a certain amount of airspace while you do your performance.
Definitely, having the right amount of space and clearance and height and things like that is super important. But also, knowing that what you are attaching yourself to can take the forces that you will put through it. Right. Not that it will take your weight, that it will take the forces that you create when you are dropping and spinning and climbing and
Very and with your particular act, just talk us a little bit with silks, how you start, and again, as you've described, it's just a huge piece of material basically. But it's a very long one. So, and I can put from the bio. I'll put any clips. I'll put all your and everybody knows. I always put at the beginning. I'll give a shout out on your Instagram account. I'll do all that, but I'll put it all on the iTunes bio as well, and then any clips you might have. So, but just talk us through your performance of the silks, because I've seen it. We've all seen it on television. Here we go. Idiot question. So basically you wrap your leg in one leg in a bit of silk, and then you pull yourself up with the other. It's not. It's completely not that. But that's what it. That's what it looks like. Is that how you?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
And then you kind of, and that takes an amazing amount of strength, I would have thought, then to pull yourself up.
Yeah, definitely. Like that's it. I know I shouldn't, but I always laugh inside when you get that one student or that one person who thinks that they can do it and it's going to be really easy. And so, it's just learning a rope, how hard's it going to be? And then they walk up to it and they're just like, oh my God, what is this? What the hell's going on? And I always secretly laugh inside. And then like, okay, you ready to listen to me now?
Yes,
okay, let's start from the beginning. And so a silks routine is generally a mix of all sorts of different like shapes and moves, and you can have like static shapes which look really pretty, where your body will make some sort of beautiful shape in and around the fabric. You can have climbs, which are a way of traveling up the equipment, so not just sort of like hand over hand, foot climb. You can make it beautiful and interesting and twisting and turning, and you've got drops as well. So drops are the big trick that everybody always wants to learn, and that's where you have like a knot or a particular way the silks are raveled around your body, so that when you let go, you will drop in a certain way and land in a catch. Generally.
And how long can that take to get perfect? Is that's quite a complicated move, it sounds.
Yeah, so it's not just one move. It's like a whole category of things.
Right, okay.
And it's not so much like the length of time. So when I'm teaching, it's not like, oh, you must do like a minimum of this. It's very much judged on the individual. So you could come to one of my classes for months and months and months, but if I don't feel like you're ready, you're not going to do it until I think that you are
ready to
strong enough, you've got the core control, and that I feel confident that you can do the wrap correctly and things like that. So again, it's all about these breaking it down into these baby steps.
Yes.
So you might do there's a number of drops which are quite small. So you might start with one of these little small ones and then work up to bigger, more complicated, more dangerous.
Yeah. Okay. And what's the and you were talking about, because you're teaching and you've got students to go, oh, I can do this. What's the biggest sort of one mistake that most students will make? That is it that they think, oh, this is easy, or that that they've just got that amount of confidence that they'll just physically, I can have a go at this, or are most students quite nervous and just will listen to you and hang on every word?
It really, really varies. It's completely different. I'd say the thing that I have to the thing that most people have to work really hard on is just like keeping their body engagement. So I think because a lot of positions where you are, say, sat on the trapeze or supported in the silks, a lot of people just tend to like let go of their muscles a little bit and then they relax. And it's like, no, you have to keep it on, because otherwise you can pull a muscle or it starts to it, or and you ruin your lines and things like that. So a lot of the time I tell my students quite a lot. I'm like, no, hold on to your bones. Like, don't just turn into like these wibbly wobbly like jelly. Like,
yeah. Don't don't let it all hang out just yet.
Yeah, don't be a jellyfish. Be like a stick. Be like.
Oh, I see. Right.
Steel, yeah.
And do you get a lot of injuries as well? A lot of people limping out, or they pull a muscle, or they twist a knee, or is that just part of it?
There are certain risks involved, but things like pulling muscles and things like that, again, if you've got a good teacher, they would have done a proper warm up with you. They'll cool down. They'll have done again, and this thing about breaking a move down into its little baby steps. So hopefully you haven't like jumped right ahead to something that your body can't necessarily handle. I mean, accidents always happen, but I mean the most common thing is bruises and friction burns, to be honest.
Yes.
The equipment tends to bite back sometimes, so you'll get bruises and burns from ropes and things like that.
And hey, we've covered a load there with the teaching and the area of acrobatics, but you also do fire play as well, and there's different disciplines with that. So are you a fire breather, or are you a fire eater, or you do both?
A bit of both. Yeah, I mean, I do fire. It's not like my main skill. So I can do fire breathing, but it's not like I'm not like an amazing fire breather. It's something I still need to probably practice.
Sure.
And yes, I do fire eating and body burning and various props and things with fire. So like hula hoops and fans. And
body burning. So is that the one where you just you put the whatever the thing, what's it called, the flame torch, which is on
the
fire.
Flame or the wick or
and then you put it along as though you're rubbing it along your skin. That's body burning, is it?
Yeah, well, I mean, you do actually like rub it on your skin.
Do you actually? What actually happens? So what's the trick there? So you've got. You just literally, because obviously the flame's going up, there's a bit of physics involved, but is it that, so the cool part of the flame, if there is a cool part, how do you not get burnt? But that's the question I'm trying to ask.
Well, sometimes you do get burnt. Honestly, I'm always a little bit wary answering questions like this, because I'm always terrified somebody's going to be like, oh yeah, so then it's really easy and I can do it, and then they're going to.
Right, no, I always put a full warning of I'll do a warning at the beginning. Yeah, do not attempt any of this, because you are a professional.
So, I would say with aerial as well. Go and find yourself a decent teacher. Yes. Go and find yourself a studio with nice thick crash mats, and with fire as well. Don't just think, oh, my mate does it, and then get them to find somebody who actually knows about.
Absolutely.
Find somebody who's insured. Find somebody who's got like all their safety kit and who knows what they're doing. Yeah. And there's classes and stuff as well you can take in that, which they'll know even more than like I do. So
that's a good one. Listen, and Sheffield, well, it's got 2 circus schools over there, but I'm sure if people Google UK circus schools, a load will come up, because it sounds like it's massive. There's a resurgence, Greatest Showman. It's all going good at the moment.
Yes. Yeah.
So and then God, time's ticking on. We've crammed so much in, Jess, and it's been fascinating. And listen, I'm sure there'll be follow-up episodes, because I love the whole circus performing thing. I don't think there's enough interviews with people like yourself. So, but one question I forgot to say at the beginning. My sort of last question of each interview, I always say to my guest, who do you think I should have on a future episode of Funny Peculiar? So a performer that you're really impressed, or you think, oh, they'd be a good, and I'm putting you right on the spot now because I didn't warn you. So now. Yeah,
no, well, you did warn me, so I had a little bit of a think.
Oh,
so
right.
There we go. Got someone in mind. Yeah. I would like to recommend my friend Rebecca Solomon. She is an absolutely sensational aerialist. She's completely fantastic, and she's done some really amazing sort of like aerial theatre work and things recently, and yeah, she's just got some she's got a really great insight onto things as well. And yeah, she's fantastic. You should speak to her.
Wonderful. I will do indeed. I will track Rebecca down. Jess, thank you very much for today. And
You're so welcome. Yeah.
I really appreciate it, and I've learnt loads. And there you are, and especially on the different trapezes. I will go away and I will bore people with my info. I'm going to go and whoever I meet now, I'm going to. Did you know there's 4 different types of? I didn't know that. There we go. And that's the flying trapeze, which everybody is familiar with, but there's lots of different disciplines and styles. So that's wonderful. So
absolutely.
So thank you for coming on the show today.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thanks for having me.
You've been listening to Funny Peculiar. Tune in next week. More great guests.